Six friends break into an abandoned hospital for a night of fun. They discover they're trapped in a lethal game of hide and seek. The rules are simple. Hide until sunrise, don't get caught, and only one gets to leave. If you're watching this, don't come looking for us. Don't come to this place. I'm the only one left. And I don't even know if I'm actually free. Six of us. 6 idiots. We thought it would be a fun video. A ghost hunt. A little scare for the subscribers. We had no idea we were signing up for a game. The night began with laughter. Jax mocked the danger, welcoming everyone to the abandoned hospital as if they were arriving at a party, joking that the first person to scream would have to buy dinner. Leo wasn't laughing. Every step reminded him the building had been condemned for years, and he warned the others they shouldn't be there. Mia brushed off his fears, insisting it was just an old, empty hospital with nothing more threatening than a few creaking floorboards. But Chloe couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Uneasy from the moment they arrived, she quietly begged the group to stay outside instead of venturing deeper into the darkness. None of them knew that this would be the last normal conversation they would ever have. "Come on, Chloe. We stick together, we're fine. We'll be out of here in 2 hours." As they wandered deeper into the abandoned hospital, Eli's flashlight landed on a rusted brass plaque still hanging on the wall. It read, "Westbrook Sanatorium. Established 1947, closed 1987. Mors tua, vita mia." Leo frowned as he translated the Latin inscription. "Your death, my life." The words hung in the air like a warning no one wanted to acknowledge. Before anyone could laugh it off, a deep mechanical hum echoed through the silent corridors. It was low, steady, almost as if an old generator had suddenly come back to life after decades of silence. The group froze. Someone whispered, asking if everyone else had heard it. Jax, refusing to let fear take hold, dismissed the sound as nothing more than the wind moving through the decaying building. With a grin, he urged everyone to keep going. "Come on," he said. "Let's find the morgue." It was the worst decision they would make that night. Mia forced out a nervous laugh, convinced someone in the group had staged an elaborate prank. But one by one, everyone denied knowing anything about it. None of them had expected the abandoned hospital to have electricity, let alone someone watching them. Then, without warning, the massive entrance doors slammed shut. The deafening crash echoed through the building as heavy chains wrapped around the handles from the outside. Jax sprinted to the exit, yanking at the doors with all his strength. They wouldn't move. He slammed his shoulder into them again and again, but the steel doors remained firmly sealed. Panic spread through the group. "Who's doing this?" Jax shouted into the empty hallway. "This isn't funny anymore." Before anyone could answer, the hospital's ancient intercom crackled to life. A burst of static filled the silence, followed by a cold, distorted robotic voice that echoed through every corridor. "Hide until the sun rises." A long pause. "If I find you, I keep you." Another crackle. "The game begins in 60 seconds. Good luck, you'll need it." The voice fell silent. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, somewhere deep within the darkness of the hospital, something began to move. The hospital lobby was swallowed by darkness. Then, one by one, the old fluorescent lights flickered back to life, bathing the room in a sickly green glow. Dust drifted through the air as an ancient television mounted on the wall suddenly switched on by itself. A countdown appeared on the screen. 59, 58, 57. The reality of their situation hit them all at once. Chloe's voice broke as panic overwhelmed her. She realized this wasn't a prank, and whatever was happening inside the hospital was terrifyingly real. There was no more time to argue. With only 1 minute before the game began, everyone searched frantically for a place to hide. The only chance of surviving was to disappear before the countdown reached 0. The plan was simple: stay alive until sunrise, then find each other again. The group scattered in every direction. Some sprinted upstairs, others vanished into the maze of dark hallways and abandoned patient rooms. Without thinking, I grabbed Mia's hand and pulled her into a narrow corridor where the darkness swallowed us whole. As our footsteps faded into the silence, I looked back one last time. That was the last moment we were ever together. Mia and I squeezed into a cramped supply closet, barely leaving enough room to breathe. Dust-covered sheets hung from rusty rusted shelves, filling the air with the smell of mildew and decay. Every breath felt loud in the suffocating silence. Her voice trembled as she whispered, asking what this place was and why any of this was happening. I wished I had an answer. The only thing I knew was what the distorted voice had told us. We had to stay hidden until 6 in the morning, nearly 8 hours inside a hospital that clearly wasn't abandoned. Mia shook her head, refusing to believe the rest of the message. There was no way only one of us would survive. We had come together, and somehow we would leave together. Before I could respond, a sound echoed through the hallway. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Uneven. Dragging across the floor, as though something was hauling its own weight through the darkness. Every muscle in my body locked. I quickly covered Mia's mouth before she could make a sound. We held our breath. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Closer. Then they stopped. Right outside the closet door. For several endless seconds, there was nothing but silence. It felt as though whatever was standing on the other side was listening. Through a narrow crack in the wood, I saw it. A figure that looked almost human, but wasn't. Its arms and legs were impossibly long, its skin unnaturally pale, and where a face should have been, there was only a smooth, featureless head. Dressed in a tattered hospital gown, it stood perfectly still, tilting its head as though listening for the faintest sound. Seconds felt like hours. Then, without warning, the creature slowly turned and disappeared into the darkness. Only after it was gone did we dare to breathe again. We knew one thing. The closet was no longer safe. Moving as quietly as possible, we slipped into the hallway. The flickering lights cast long, shifting shadows across the peeling walls as we crept deeper into the abandoned hospital, hoping to find the others before whatever that thing was found them first. Then a scream shattered the silence. It echoed through every corridor. I recognized it instantly. It was Jack's. Without thinking, we ran toward the sound. We burst into a massive hospital ward where overturned beds and broken equipment littered the floor. In the center of the room, Jax lay trapped beneath the faceless creature. Its thin skeletal hand rested on his chest, pinning him to the ground with impossible strength. Jax fought with everything he had, screaming for help as the creature leaned silently over him. And for the first time that night, we realized the game had truly begun. What happened next was far worse than anything we could have imagined. The creature didn't attack Jax. It didn't slash at him. It didn't tear him apart. Instead, it slowly pressed one pale skeletal hand against his chest. At first, nothing happened. Then his body began to change. The color drained from his skin until it became the dull gray of cold ash. It spread across him inch by inch, consuming him before our eyes. His screams grew weaker as his body crumbled, breaking apart into fine dust that drifted silently onto the floor. Within seconds, what happened next was far worse than anything we could have imagined. The creature didn't attack Jax. It didn't slash at him. It didn't tear him apart. Instead, it slowly pressed one pale skeletal hand against his chest. At first, nothing happened. Then his body began to change. The color drained from his skin until it became the dull gray of cold ash. It spread across him inch by inch, consuming him before our eyes. His screams grew weaker as his body crumbled, breaking apart into fine dust that drifted silently onto the floor. Within seconds, Jax was gone. All that remained was a small pile of gray ash where a living person had been standing only moments before. A cold whisper of wind swept through the ward, carrying the dust across the cracked tiles as though he had never existed. Then the creature slowly turned. It had no face, no eyes, no mouth, and yet both Mia and I knew it was looking directly at us. For one terrifying moment, neither of us moved. Then instinct took over. We ran, as fast as our legs would carry us, but the creature didn't follow. It simply stood in the middle of the room, silently watching us disappear into the darkness. That was the moment we understood the true horror of the game. It wasn't trying to kill us. It was erasing us, one by one, as if we had never existed at all. After escaping the ward, Mia and I ran through the maze of dark hallways until we reached the hospital's abandoned chapel. Inside, we found Leo, Chloe, and Eli hiding in terrified silence. The room felt just as cursed as the rest of the building. Faded stained glass windows lined the walls, but the saints depicted in them had twisted, melted faces that seemed to watch our every movement. Relief at finding each other lasted only a moment before panic took over. Everyone had seen what happened to Jax. No one could explain it. Leo was still in shock, unable to process how a person could simply vanish into dust. Chloe had completely broken down, sobbing uncontrollably and desperately wishing she could go home to her family. Fear threatened to tear the group apart. Someone had to keep everyone focused. We reminded ourselves that panic would only make things worse. If we stayed together, remained quiet, and avoided drawing attention, we might have a chance of surviving until sunrise. Then Eli spoke. While the rest of us had been hiding in fear, he had been watching the creature. He noticed something none of us had. It wasn't wandering randomly. It was following a routine. Roughly every 45 minutes, the faceless creature repeated the same patrol through the hospital's hallways. If his observations were correct, there were brief windows when the corridors would be empty, allowing us to move safely from one hiding place to another. For the first time since the nightmare began, a small spark of hope appeared. Maybe survival wasn't impossible after all. Maybe all we had to do was stay hidden until 6 in the morning. As the group tried to catch their breath inside the abandoned chapel, one question refused to leave their minds. If the voice had promised that only one person would survive until sunrise, what would happen if they all managed to stay alive? The rule made no sense. None of them could understand why the game demanded a single survivor. Before anyone could answer, a soft sound drifted through the chapel. A child's laughter. It echoed down the empty hallway. Sweet. Innocent. Completely out of place. Every member of the group froze. The sound sent a chill through the room, and Chloe instinctively covered her mouth as she listened. For a brief moment, hope replaced fear. Maybe there was another survivor. Maybe a child had somehow become trapped inside the hospital. But something about the laughter felt wrong. Too perfect, too deliberate. We immediately realized it couldn't be real. Whatever was hunting us had already proven it didn't play by normal rules. There was no reason to believe this was anything different. It was a trap. Before anyone could stop her, Chloe slowly stood up. Driven by fear, guilt, and compassion, she convinced herself that if there really was a child out there, she couldn't simply leave them behind. She took a step toward the chapel door, then another. Behind her, the rest of us felt pure panic. We knew she wasn't walking toward a frightened child. She was walking straight into whatever had been waiting for someone to make that mistake. The chapel door slowly creaked open. Standing in the doorway was a little girl. She looked completely normal. She held an old doll in one hand and wore a gentle smile that made her seem harmless. For one brief moment, it looked as though Chloe had been right all along. The child quietly invited her to come and play. Unable to ignore what she believed was an innocent child in need, Chloe reached out. The little girl took her hand. Then, her smile began to stretch, wider and wider, until it split unnaturally across her face. Before anyone could react, the child yanked Chloe into the dark hallway with impossible strength. Chloe screamed. She desperately clawed at the floor, trying to pull herself back into the chapel, but something in the darkness dragged her away. The heavy door slammed shut. Silence. A few agonizing seconds passed. Then, from behind the door, a small child's voice whispered, "Thank you for playing." The door slowly opened again. Chloe was gone. The only thing left behind was a single shoe lying alone on the cold chapel floor. No one moved. No one spoke. The reality of what had just happened crushed every last bit of hope we had left. It wasn't just one creature hunting us. There were others. Each one was different. Each one had its own method, its own trap, its own terrifying way of making people disappear. And somehow, we had wandered into a hospital filled with them. After losing Chloe, we were forced to accept a painful truth. There was no saving anyone anymore. If we wanted to survive, our only chance was to keep ourselves alive. The four of us, Mia, Leo, Eli, and I, retreated into the hospital morgue. Rows of cold metal body drawers lined the walls, while dusty body bags hung silently from rusted hooks. The air was freezing, and every breath echoed through the room. We collapsed against the wall, exhausted, trying to steady our breathing. The silence didn't last. Leo finally broke. He admitted that none of this felt real anymore. He hadn't come to the hospital expecting a nightmare. He had only wanted to film a stupid video with his friends. The rest of us felt exactly the same. But reality didn't care why we had come. The fear had become too much for him. The thought of hiding for another 5 hours inside that cursed hospital was slowly destroying him. I tried to reassure him. I told him we were going to survive. I told him we were going to survive, all of us. But Leo no longer believed that was possible. The voice had been clear from the very beginning. Only one person would survive. Jax was gone. That left only 4 of us. No matter how desperately we wanted to deny it, the numbers weren't on our side. Eli reluctantly agreed. The game wasn't designed to let everyone escape. It would only end when a single survivor remained. Still, Mia refused to surrender. She believed there had to be another way out, an emergency exit, a forgotten tunnel. Anything. That's when Eli remembered something important. Earlier that night, he had seen the hospital's blueprints inside the administration office. According to the plans, an underground tunnel connected the building to the old morgue incinerator. If the tunnel still existed, it could lead us outside. For the first time in hours, we had a destination. The problem was getting there. The tunnel entrance was on the opposite side of the hospital, and reaching it meant crossing territory controlled by whatever was hunting us. Before anyone could speak, another sound interrupted the silence. Tap, tap, tap. A slow, rhythmic tapping echoed through the morgue. Every one of us froze. The sound was coming from inside one of the metal body drawers. It rattled once. Then again, no one dared move. The drawer slowly slid open by itself. Inside lay a corpse. But it wasn't a stranger. It was wearing Leo's jacket. It had Leo's face. The dead figure slowly sat upright and began speaking in Leo's own voice, repeating every fear he had been trying to hide. That he was the weakest member of the group, that he was the weakest member of the group, that he was holding everyone back, and that the others would be better off without him. With a deafening bang, the drawer slammed shut. Silence returned. Mia collapsed into tears. Another friend had disappeared. Another life erased without a trace. Eli's expression never changed. By then, he had finally understood what the hospital was doing. It wasn't simply hunting us. It was studying us, learning our fears, turning our own doubts against us. Monsters didn't just want our lives. They wanted our minds first. Only 3 of us remained. Mia, Eli, and me. We hid in the hospital's dark basement, surrounded by rusted pipes and crumbling concrete walls. The silence was broken only by the faint hum of old machinery. On a flickering monitor mounted to the wall, the countdown continued relentlessly. 2037 a.m. More than half the night had passed, but somehow the end felt farther away than ever. As we rested, Eli finally shared the theory that had been haunting him. He no longer believed the voice's instructions. The command to hide until sunrise wasn't meant to save us, it was meant to trap us. The hospital had supposedly been abandoned since 1987, yet the game was still running. That could only mean one thing. Other people had been forced to play long before we arrived, and none of them had ever escaped. They would become the next monster stalking these halls, waiting for another group to arrive. The thought was unbearable. The hospital wasn't just taking lives, it was creating an endless cycle that had been repeating for decades. That realization changed everything. There was no reason to wait for sunrise anymore. If Eli was right, following the rules would only guarantee we became the next prisoners of the hospital. There was only one chance left. Forget the game, forget the rules, find the underground tunnel, and escape before the hospital claimed the last 3 of us forever. Eli reached into his pocket and unfolded a worn, crumpled blueprint of the hospital. His finger traced a narrow route through the maze of corridors before stopping at a single point near the edge of the building. The underground tunnel was hidden behind the old incinerator in the crematorium. If the map was accurate, it led directly to the parking lot outside. Under normal circumstances, the journey would take less than 20 minutes. But nothing about that hospital was normal. The faceless creature was still patrolling the hallways. Crossing the building meant exposing ourselves. One wrong turn, one wrong sound, and the game would be over. Eli had already thought of that. He calmly explained that he knew the creature's patrol route better than anyone. If he drew its attention and lured it toward the east wing, the monster would need nearly 10 minutes to complete its patrol before returning. 10 minutes. Just enough time for Mia and me to reach the tunnel entrance. Neither of us could accept the idea. We had already lost too many friends. We refused to lose another. Helping someone survive by sacrificing another was exactly what the game wanted us to believe, but Eli only smiled. It was the quiet, heartbreaking smile of someone who had already made peace with his decision. He believed the game demanded a single survivor, but it never said that survivor had to be chosen by the monsters. If someone had to stay behind, he wanted it to be his choice. His only request was that we escape, that we never let the hospital claim us, that we never became part of the nightmare waiting for its next victims. Without another word, Eli embraced both of us. He took one slow, steady breath. Then he stepped into the corridor. The silence lasted only a second. His voice echoed through the hospital as he deliberately called out to the creature, challenging it to follow him. A horrifying screech answered from somewhere deep within the darkness. Moments later, the sound of massive footsteps thundered through the halls, racing after Eli. That was our chance. I tightened my grip on Mia's hand. Together, we ran. The moment the creature disappeared after Eli, we didn't hesitate. This was our only chance. Mia and I sprinted through the dark basement, our footsteps echoing off the cold concrete walls as every second felt like it could be our last. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the hospital's abandoned crematorium. The enormous incinerator towered over the room, covered in rust and decades of dust. Behind it, almost completely hidden from view, stood a heavy steel door. Faded letters were still visible across its surface. Tunnel access. Authorized personnel. Only. Our hearts raced. This had to be it. The escape route Eli had risked everything to show us. For the first time all night, hope felt real. Then, a scream echoed through the hospital. It was distant, painful, unmistakable. It was Eli. The sound abruptly stopped. Silence followed. At that exact moment, a nearby wall monitor flickered to life. A single message appeared on the screen. Eli deceased. Not just for ourselves, for Eli. With trembling hands, we pulled open a heavy steel door. Beyond it stretched a narrow underground tunnel swallowed by darkness. Without looking back, we crawled inside. Mia and I stumbled out of the tunnel into the hospital parking lot just as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. The main road was right in front of us. We had made it. After everything we had survived, we truly believed the nightmare was over. Overcome with relief, we laughed, cried, and embraced each other before running toward the exit. Then everything changed. Just as we reached the gate, a wall of crackling static appeared out of nowhere, sealing off the road to freedom. The hospital's ancient intercom crackled to life one final time. The distorted voice announced that the game had officially ended with the arrival of 6 o'clock. But the final rule had never changed. Only one survivor was allowed to leave. With 2 players still alive, a final choice had to be made. At that moment, a glowing 60-second countdown appeared on the hospital wall. If the timer reached 0 without a decision, neither of us would escape. Mia couldn't believe what she was hearing. We had survived the entire night. We had followed every rule. We had escaped through the tunnel, yet none of it was enough. The voice revealed the truth. The tunnel had only been a loophole, and now it was closing it forever. As the countdown continued, the parking lot itself began to dissolve into waves of static. The invisible barrier crept closer with every passing second. Then, the hospital doors slowly opened. The faceless creature emerged once again, dragging its impossibly long limbs across the pavement as it advanced toward us. Overwhelmed by grief and exhaustion, Mia broke down completely. She couldn't bear the thought of watching another friend disappear. Looking at her, I made my decision. No matter what happened next, she was going to leave that place alive. Mia stared at me in disbelief, refusing to accept what I had already decided. She searched desperately for another solution, convinced there had to be some way for both of us to escape. But there wasn't. Not anymore. As the faceless creature drew closer with every slow, deliberate step, the truth became impossible to ignore. We were out of time. I reminded Mia of a memory from our childhood, of the day she had risked her own life to save mine. This time, it was my turn to return that gift. She begged me to keep fighting, to run, to find another way. But we both knew there wasn't one. The creature continued closing the distance. Every second brought it nearer. I took Mia's hand one last time and looked into her eyes. I asked her to leave, to go home, to tell the world what had happened inside that hospital, to make sure no one else would ever walk through those doors again. She tearfully promised she would. That promise was all I needed. With one final push, I sent her toward the gate. As if the game had finally accepted its decision, the wall of static opened just long enough for her to pass through. She stumbled onto the main road. She was free. Behind her, she screamed my name, begging me to come back, but I never followed. The faceless creature finally reached me. It placed its cold, pale hand against my chest. There was no pain, no fear, only a strange sense of peace. In that final moment, I understood the truth. The ghost hadn't defeated me. The game had. But it hadn't taken away my choice. I chose who would survive, and that made all the difference. My body slowly crumbled into fine gray ash before disappearing completely. The faceless creature silently turned away and disappeared back into the hospital as though its work was finally complete. When the sun fully rose, the building looked ordinary once again. Just another abandoned hospital standing in silence. On the side of the road, Mia collapsed to the ground, covered in dust and tears. She looked back at the place that had taken everyone she loved. Then, through quiet sobs, she made the same promise one last time. She would tell the story. She would warn anyone who would listen, and she would never let the world forget what happened inside those walls. Mia kept her promise. After returning home, she shared everything that had happened inside the abandoned hospital, warning people to stay away from the place no matter what. The story spread across the internet almost overnight. Millions watched. Thousands commented. But instead of believing her, most dismissed it as another fake horror story. Some accused her of chasing attention. Others mocked her, convinced she had invented the entire nightmare. No one believed the only survivor. Months passed. Life moved on for everyone else. But not for Mia. The nightmares never stopped. Every day she found herself staring at old photographs of the friends she had lost, haunted by memories she could never escape. Then one evening, her phone lit up with a notification. At first, she assumed it was just another message. It wasn't. The screen displayed a chilling announcement. New game detected! 1 player detected! The location listed wasn't an abandoned hospital. It was her own bedroom. The rules were painfully familiar. Hide until sunrise. If caught, you die. Only one survivor. The color drained from her face. At that exact moment, the lights inside her apartment began to flicker. She slowly looked toward the bedroom doorway. Standing there, perfectly still, was the faceless creature. It silently tilted its head, as if greeting an old friend. Mia couldn't understand it. She had escaped. The game was over. It was supposed to be over. Then another voice echoed from the darkness, a voice she knew better than any other. Mine. The voice revealed the truth I had never told her. I hadn't ended the game. I had only delayed it. My sacrifice had bought her 6 months of freedom, nothing more. The game never truly ends. It simply waits, searching for its next player. And now, it had chosen her. Mia's scream filled the apartment as the faceless creature lunged from the doorway. The camera crashed to the floor. The image dissolved into crackling static. Then, through the silence, the same cold, robotic voice spoke one final time. The game was complete. A winner had been recorded. A new game was already loading. The search for new players had begun. The screen faded to black. Only one sentence remained. The game never ends. It only finds new players.